Living in northern Michigan requires its residents to adapt to the cold extremes of winter. While some of us bundle up and shovel the snow, others choose a warmer alternative. Here in the Elk Rapids area, some of our folks often call two locations home. They enjoy summer sun until the weather begins to turn. Then these snowbirds migrate to other places like Arizona and Florida. Today we investigate the story of a resident migrating snowbird of the feathered variety, with a story that's sure to fascinate. Northern Michigan is home to a songbird species that survived extinction not by adapting to environmental disruption, but because of efforts of caring humans to protect them. Likely because of its elusive nature and its near brush with extinction, birdwatchers flock to northern Michigan to get a rare glimpse of this pretty little bird. You too are invited to join the cult following, but first we have to get you up to speed. Meet Kirtland's warbler, a tiny little bug eater that lives in a relatively small area in northern Michigan and now expanding to Wisconsin and Ontario. Its winters are spent in the Bahamas and nearby Turks and Caicos. The real story here is that this bird was almost extinct, were it not for extraordinary human efforts to re-engineer Mother Nature's work. Back in 1857, Jared P. Kirtland, a physician and amateur naturalist, identified the warbler found on his farm near Cleveland. That specimen was probably just passing through. It wasn't until 1903 that the up north breeding site near Mayo, Michigan was discovered. Male Kirtland's warblers arrived back in Michigan from the Bahamas between May 3rd and May 20th, a few days ahead of the females. The males establish and defend territories and then court the females when they arrive. The male's song is loud yet low-pitched, ending with an upward inflection. This song is what census takers listen for, and ecotourists travel great distances to hear. As the female builds a nest of leaves and grass, lined with mosses or deer hair, the male begins to bring her food. Three to 5 eggs are laid, and they hatch after 9 days in late May. 2 weeks later, they leave the nest and continue to be fed by the parents. They go their own way after 5 weeks. Kirtland's warbler requires a very specific habitat for survival. They will only nest on the ground beneath live branches in the jack pine barrens of northern Michigan. The jack pine only grows in the specific soil type locally known as grayling sand. This acidic soil is low in fertility and organic material and extremely porous. Early summer rainstorms are unlikely to flood the ground nests. As jack pines age, their lower branches begin to die, and the Kirtland warbler habitat begins to disappear. This was the key to the near extinction of the warbler. Kirtland's numbers were probably stable until the late 1800s, when white pine lumbering opened up many more acres for jack pine growth. The warbler requires jack pine between 5 to 20 feet, or up to about 20 years of age. Older than that, and the lower branches begin to die. Nature provided the solution. Sporadic forest fires would burn off acres of jack pine. Amazingly, the heat of the fire caused the jack pine seeds to pop from the pine cones. The reseeding and reforestation rebuilds the habitat. By 1900, the warbler numbers had peaked. With the advent of modern fire prevention techniques, forest management practices did not emphasize the regeneration of jack pine. As a result, the jack pine overmatured, and the young tree habitat began to disappear. Warbler near extinction resulted. Finally, in the 1970s, acreage was set aside with a plan to save Kirtland's warbler. By the 1990s, 150 acres were managed by logging, planned burning, seeding, and replanting. Warbler populations began to make a comeback. The story doesn't end here. The warbler was not only threatened by loss of habitat, but also by competition. Here is where we meet Molothrus ater, the brown-headed cowbird, a plain-looking bird lacking the beauty and sweet song of our warbler. It takes on the role of the villain in our story. In the early days on the American plains, when vast herds of American bison and cattle roamed about, the cowbird, hence the name, would follow along, thriving on the bugs that lived with the cattle. As the cattle moved along, so did the bugs. A continuously moving food source meant that a weeks-long nesting process was impossible. For survival, the cowbird laid eggs in the other birds' nests along the way and left the hatching process to them. Fast forward to current Kirtland's survival. A female cowbird finds a Kirtland's nest and lays 2 or 3 eggs. These eggs hatch to become slightly larger chicks and more aggressive feeders. Their competition kills the warbler chicks. The National Forest Service and the Michigan DNR began building cage traps and stocked them with millet seed and live cowbirds. Yearly, they trap approximately 4,000 cowbirds and euthanize them. Cowbirds are apparently a nuisance, and their successful adaptation to their environment has led to an overpopulation that endangered a less adaptive species. It's probably not likely that we will be building any monuments to the cowbird. Perhaps there's a lesson in this story. When Charles Darwin gave us insight about natural selection, his bird subjects adapted to their environment on Galapagos Island without any human intervention. Here in Michigan, we almost drove our Kirtland's warbler to extinction, figured it out, and then re-engineered their survival. As we become more and more integrated with nature, our role as nature's stewards becomes critical. Northern Michigan birders are invited to explore the pine barrens and discover the Kirtland's warbler. The nesting areas are protected and the Michigan DNR provides tours. You can arrange a great day trip around a visit to the Hartwick Pines State Park Visitor Center near Grayling and a 2 to 3 hour tour. Visit the website for more information about park permits, how to dress, and what to expect. When you've seen and heard this, you can take spotting a Kirtland's warbler off your bucket list.